Why do some women walk into a room and shift the energy without saying a word? Why do people lean in when they speak, take notes when they pause, and never forget the way they made them feel? I'll tell you why. It's because they are high-value women. And let me be crystal clear from the start, this has nothing to do with money, fame, or appearance. It has everything to do with power, earned, embodied, and projected. And not the kind of power you scream about. I'm talking about the kind that sits in silence and still owns the room. You don't stumble into becoming a high-value woman. You build it, brick by brick, decision by decision. You don't need to beg to be seen. You train people to see you differently by how you carry yourself when no one's looking. It starts in the small, invisible moments, the ones no one claps for, when you choose discipline over impulse, when you speak truth over flattery, when you walk away from what insults your soul without needing to explain a damn thing. That's where value is born. A high-value woman knows that being liked is not the goal, being respected is. And respect doesn't come from trying to fit in. It comes from standing out, and sometimes standing alone. You don't lower your standards to avoid being alone. You raise your standards so you never have to betray yourself just to keep someone around. You choose solitude over disrespect. You choose peace over chaos. You don't chase, you attract. And you do that by becoming undeniable, not available. You become high value the moment you stop outsourcing your validation. The moment you stop asking the world to tell you who you are. You define that for yourself. And if you need someone to clap for you before you feel worthy, you're still training in the shadows. A high-value woman claps for herself in empty rooms. She doesn't shrink when people don't approve. She grows anyway. She moves anyway. Because her sense of self is not fragile, it's fortified. A high-value woman doesn't walk into a room trying to be noticed. She walks in knowing exactly who she is. She doesn't need to raise her voice or compete for the spotlight. That's not her style. She doesn't perform for attention because her power isn't loud. It's deeply rooted. She knows the difference between being visible and being valuable. Anyone can be seen, but not everyone can command respect when they are. She's not desperate to be liked. She doesn't measure her worth by compliments, followers, or approval. That's cheap currency. What she seeks is much rarer, respect. And she earns that through consistency, not charisma. Through presence, not performance. People don't lean in because she's flashy. They lean in because she's solid. When she speaks, it's intentional. When she moves, it's with certainty. She doesn't entertain drama, doesn't chase chaos, and doesn't waste words. There's a calm to her that unnerves the insecure. She doesn't talk over people to prove she's smart. She listens, watches, and then delivers truth that lands with weight. That's what makes her unforgettable. She doesn't react to noise. She studies the room before she ever makes a move, and when she finally does, people feel it. She doesn't beg for a seat at the table. She builds her own and makes it so strong that others wonder how she got there. The secret: she never made being liked her mission. She made becoming unshakable her purpose. And that is exactly why people respect her. Not because she demanded it, but because she embodied it. A high-value woman doesn't beg for decency. She sets standards so clear that they don't need to be explained twice. She knows that what you tolerate is what you'll live with, so she's ruthless about protecting her boundaries. Not because she's cold, but because she values herself too much to be mishandled. Standards are not about arrogance, they're about self-respect. And she doesn't compromise them just to keep people around. If someone's presence requires her to lower her expectations, they were never meant to be there in the first place. She doesn't wait to be treated well, she requires it. Not through ultimatums, but through consistency in how she treats herself. If you talk down to her, you're gone. If you play games, she doesn't play back, she leaves the field. She doesn't argue with people about what she deserves. She decides, and she acts. That's power. She doesn't soften her standards just because someone seems promising. Potential doesn't impress her. Proof does. Patterns do. And if they don't align, she doesn't flinch when she walks away. You see, her standards are not a test, they are a filter. And the moment someone shows they can't meet them, she doesn't try to convince them, she steps aside. Because a high-value woman doesn't force anything. Not respect, not love, not friendship. She creates an environment where only the worthy stay. Where effort is matched, energy is protected, and her time is treated like it costs something, because it does. She's not expensive, she's rare, and the rare don't negotiate with the average. A high-value woman doesn't hand out access like it's free samples. She knows her time, her presence, her energy. Those are not things to be given lightly. She's not a revolving door for people who haven't earned the right to be in her life. She's not impressed by effort that comes with conditions. She's not moved by words that lack consistency. She doesn't allow just anyone to enter her world simply because they want to. Wanting access to her isn't enough. You need to deserve it. She's intentional about who she allows in her space, because she understands something most people ignore. Who you allow near you shapes how you think, how you feel, and how you grow. She's not here to carry dead weight. If someone drains her peace, she doesn't fight with them. She removes them. She doesn't need to be liked so badly that she allows energy thieves to linger. She protects herself with silence, with distance, with discernment. Her circle may be small, but every person in it is solid. And here's the thing. Just because someone is familiar doesn't mean they're healthy. She doesn't keep people around out of habit. She assesses alignment, not just history. She's not guilt, tripped by loyalty to the wrong people. That's what separates her. She doesn't confuse proximity with privilege. You don't get to stay in her life just because you've been there. You stay because you bring peace, respect, and purpose. She knows the difference between someone who wants her attention and someone who values her presence. That clarity, that's how she keeps her energy clean and her standards unshaken. A high-value woman doesn't wait for someone to tell her she's enough. She already knows. She doesn't need applause to feel worthy. She doesn't need constant reassurance to believe in her own power. That's the thing about her. Her sense of self isn't fragile. It's built from truth, from fire, from doing the work when no one was watching. She stopped outsourcing her validation the moment she realized that depending on someone else to define her worth was the fastest way to lose herself. You can't manipulate her with silence. You can't control her with approval. She's not playing that game. She's rooted, grounded. And when she looks in the mirror, she's not asking the world, "Do you see me?" She's saying, "I see me. I trust me." And that's enough. That kind of inner certainty. It's rare, because it's not performative. It's not wrapped up in how she looks, or what she owns, or who validates her. It's about who she becomes when the lights are off, when the room is empty, when she's faced with her own reflection and still chooses to stand tall. She doesn't need to post every move for approval. She doesn't need to explain her silence. She's not addicted to visibility because she's already clear on her identity. People's opinions don't shake her. They inform her. And even then, only when it aligns with her truth. She doesn't live to impress. She lives to express who she really is, unapologetically. Because the moment she reclaimed her worth, she stopped asking for permission to exist fully. And once a woman reaches that place, there's no going back. A high-value woman knows that peace is power. Not the kind of peace that's passive, but the kind you fight for, protect, and refuse to lose. She's not interested in drama, noise, or emotional chaos. That doesn't impress her. She doesn't thrive in conflict. She removes herself from it. Because she understands that every argument, every toxic exchange, every moment spent trying to prove a point to someone committed to misunderstanding her is a drain on her energy. And her energy is sacred. She's not afraid to walk away, not because she's weak, but because she's strong enough to choose silence over dysfunction. You won't see her blowing up phones, chasing apologies, or begging for closure. She closes the door herself. She doesn't need the last word. She needs her peace. And when you value peace over attention, over control, over ego, that's when you reclaim your power. She doesn't let chaos define her reality. She sets the tone, and if something disrupts it, she either addresses it with calm clarity or exits completely. She doesn't fight battles that aren't worth it. She doesn't respond to every insult. She doesn't react to provocation. That's not avoidance. That's discipline. She's mastered restraint, and that restraint, that's strength. People confuse her silence for weakness because they don't understand the kind of woman who doesn't need to scream to be heard. She protects her peace like her life depends on it, because it does. Peace is what keeps her focused. It's what sharpens her instincts, and no matter how tempting it is to respond, to lash out, to engage, she pauses. Because she knows that not everything deserves access to her nervous system. That's the edge she keeps. That's why she stays ahead. A high-value woman is not afraid of her own company. She doesn't fill silence with noise just to feel less alone. She doesn't entertain people who bring nothing but confusion, just to avoid an empty room. Because solitude to her isn't a punishment, it's a power move. It's where she recalibrates. It's where she reclaims every piece of herself that she once gave away too freely. While most people run from being alone, she embraces it. Because she understands something most never learn: being alone is not the same as being lonely. In fact, some of the loneliest moments come when you're surrounded by the wrong people. She doesn't settle just because someone is available. She doesn't date out of boredom, text out of habit, or keep people around just because they used to matter. She's not interested in filling space. She's interested in building something real. And if that means waiting, if that means being misunderstood, if that means being the one who walks away first, so be it. Because the one thing she'll never do again is betray herself for the illusion of connection. She's done mistaking closeness for compatibility. She's done pretending that presence equals value. If you can't bring peace into her life, she'd rather be alone. And it wasn't always like this. She had to become this woman. There were times she tolerated what she shouldn't have. Times she stayed too long, gave too much, lost pieces of herself trying to make things work. But pain has a way of becoming a masterclass, and she learned, the hard way, through silence that was louder than words, through being left, doubted, disrespected. She learned that choosing herself would sometimes mean standing alone. But now, she doesn't fear it, she owns it, because being alone taught her how to hear herself. And once you hear your own voice, clearly, fully, without distortion, you stop needing other people to tell you what to feel, what to do, or who to be. She knows what it's like to sit at a dinner table and feel invisible, to be in a room full of people and still feel like no one really sees her. And instead of lowering her standards to avoid that ache, she raised them. She decided that from now on, if someone's presence requires her to shrink, to over-explain, or to silence her truth, it's not worth it. She realized that her company is a gift, not a consolation prize. And anyone who doesn't treat it that way doesn't get access. Not even temporarily. What separates her is her refusal to beg for love, attention, or effort. She doesn't play mind games. She doesn't manipulate or chase. She simply observes. If someone steps up, shows up, and aligns, they stay. If not, she lets them go, without drama, without trying to convince them of her worth. Because she knows her worth. That's the difference. She's not here to prove herself. She's not here to audition for affection. She's here to live in alignment with her values. And if someone fits into that life, it's a bonus, not a necessity. She doesn't fear being misunderstood for this strength. She's not interested in changing the narrative so people get her. She'd rather be called intimidating than be seen as someone who can be taken for granted. She knows people will mislabel her strength as coldness, her boundaries as ego, her standards as arrogance. But she doesn't care. Because the people who truly understand her, the ones who are meant to stay, will never ask her to become smaller so they can feel bigger. Those are the people she's willing to wait for. There is a quiet resilience in a woman who is at peace with herself. She doesn't need the noise. She doesn't need the chaos. She doesn't need someone to validate her every step. She's built her own inner compass. And now, she navigates life on her terms. She's not afraid to spend a Friday night with a book instead of bad company. She doesn't need a full calendar to feel important. She values her time, and if she's giving it to you, you better believe it's because you earned it. You see, a woman who chooses solitude over settling is not bitter, she's focused. She's not jaded, she's selective. She's not angry, she's aware. And that awareness is what keeps her from falling into patterns that once broke her. She's studied her past. She's dissected the pain. She's connected the dots. And now, she no longer needs someone to fix her. She fixed herself, and when a woman heals alone, grows alone, and learns to love herself alone, she becomes untouchable in the best way possible. There's nothing more dangerous to a system built on insecurity than a woman who no longer fears solitude. Because now, she can't be manipulated with silence. She can't be rushed. She can't be guilted. She makes decisions from clarity, not desperation. She responds with grace, not reactivity. And she demands more, not just from others but from herself. Her solitude became her sharpening ground. It's where she stopped pretending, where she stopped performing. It's where she stopped asking for love from people who were never capable of giving it. And it's where she discovered that she is more than enough. Whole, complete, without needing someone else to tell her so. So if she's walking alone now, it's not because no one wanted her. It's because she's done choosing people who don't know how to value her. She's done compromising depth for surface, truth for comfort, potential for peace. And from this place of strength, she builds a life that doesn't just look good from the outside. It feels right on the inside. Because when a woman gets comfortable being alone, she stops settling, she stops shrinking. She starts soaring, and nothing, not pressure, not loneliness, not fear, can convince her to go back to being a woman who would rather be chosen than free. She knows now freedom is the ultimate love story, and she's the main character in it. A high-value woman isn't moved by ego, she's grounded in grace. She doesn't explode just because someone pushes a button. She doesn't need to prove her dominance by raising her voice or pointing fingers. Her strength isn't in how loud she can get. It's in how steady she stays. She's mastered the art of self-control, not because she's suppressing emotion, but because she's disciplined enough to pause before she reacts. That pause, that's power. That's the split second where she chooses clarity over chaos, dignity over destruction. She doesn't entertain petty arguments. She doesn't respond just to be right. She knows the cost of a reckless reaction, and she's not willing to pay it. Not with her peace. Not with her energy. Not with her time. People will try to provoke her just to get a rise, to feel in control, to shift the balance. But she's unshakable. She doesn't flinch. She watches, calculates, and speaks only when it serves purpose, not when it serves ego. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's restraint. And it intimidates those who rely on chaos to feel powerful. She doesn't stoop. She elevates. And that elevation is uncomfortable for people who expect her to meet them at a lower frequency. But she won't. She knows what happens when you let your emotions lead. You end up cleaning up messes that never needed to happen. She's been there before. She's lived through the regret of speaking too soon, reacting too fast, letting anger become her voice. And now she knows better. She's not emotionless. She's emotionally intelligent. That's what makes her dangerous in the best way possible. Because you can't bait her with insults. You can't knock her off center with rumors or gossip. She sees right through manipulation. And she doesn't just walk away, she exits with grace, leaving behind silence louder than any outburst. That silence isn't passive, it's deliberate. It says, I don't need to fight to win. I am the win. And people feel that. You want to test her. Disrespect her peace. Try to pull her into a war she didn't start. You'll see quickly that she doesn't fight battles that drain her value. She preserves her energy for what truly matters. Growth, purpose, legacy. She's not here to destroy, she's here to build. And if you push her, she won't retaliate. She'll simply remove herself. That's her strength. She chooses her response based on wisdom, not emotion. She doesn't react to prove her worth. She already knows her worth. So instead of clapping back, she levels up. Instead of matching disrespect, she elevates above it. Because the high ground isn't just the harder path. It's the one that keeps her power intact. And she never gives that away, no matter how tempting the moment. A high-value woman doesn't fear falling, she fears staying down. Setbacks don't destroy her, they define her. Every failure, every betrayal, every painful ending, it all becomes fuel. She doesn't pretend life is perfect, and she doesn't run from pain. She studies it. She sits with it. She lets it teach her. Because she knows growth doesn't happen in the easy moments. It happens when everything falls apart, and she has no choice but to rebuild from the rubble. And she does. Every single time. She's not afraid to admit that she's been broken. That she's doubted herself. That there were days she could barely breathe from the weight of what she was carrying. But what makes her powerful is that she never let that become her final chapter. She uses pain like a compass. Every tear, every scar, every closed door, it shaped her. And she stopped asking, why is this happening to me? And started asking, what is this teaching me? That shift, that's when the transformation began. People often think that strength means never struggling. But she knows better. Strength means facing the struggle head on. It means getting knocked down and standing up with even more clarity, even more resolve. It means not letting failure define your identity. She doesn't wear her past like a chain. She wears it like armor. And she doesn't hide her wounds. She uses them. Because she knows the difference between being hurt and being held back. Pain doesn't make her bitter. It makes her sharper, more focused, more intentional. She knows that every time she thought it was over, it was actually a beginning, a redirection, a call to rise. And she stopped waiting for someone to rescue her. She became her own rescue. She looked in the mirror and said, if I can survive that, there's nothing I can't face. That's not arrogance. That's resilience. That's earned confidence. It's what happens when you stop seeing struggle as a setback and start treating it like a stepping stone. She doesn't hide from failure. She expects it. She understands it's part of the process. But she refuses to let it harden her. Because what makes her high value is that she still chooses softness. She still believes. She still hopes. She still shows up with a full heart, even after it's been broken. That balance of strength and vulnerability is what makes her rare. She can be fierce and forgiving. She can be unshakable and still open. That duality is her superpower. She's learned to embrace the storm, not run from it. Because that storm has refined her. It's stripped away what was weak, what was false, what no longer served her. And now she's left with something real. Something grounded. Something no one can take. Her identity is no longer built on external success. It's built on inner mastery. She trusts herself now in ways she never did before. Because when you've been to the bottom and climbed your way back up, there's a confidence that no one can shake. She doesn't fear starting over. She knows how to rebuild. She knows how to rewire, how to heal, how to pivot. She doesn't cling to what's familiar if it's no longer aligned. She lets go, quickly, cleanly, and she doesn't look back. That's what makes her different. She's not emotionally attached to comfort. She's committed to growth. And sometimes growth looks like failure, loss, or pain. But to her, it just looks like evolution. She doesn't waste time being ashamed of the past. She's not defined by the moments that broke her. She's defined by the strength it took to rise after them. And when people try to throw her past in her face, she smiles, because that past built the woman standing in front of them now. That past taught her boundaries. It taught her discernment. It taught her what she will never tolerate again. So no, she doesn't regret it. She respects it. She's not perfect. She's battle-tested. And every scar is a reminder that she didn't just survive, she thrived. She turned pain into power. She turned struggle into strategy. And now, she doesn't run from challenges. She meets them with open eyes and steady hands. Because she's been through worse and came out stronger. And when you've done that, you stop fearing life. You start owning it. A high-value woman is not afraid of being too much. She doesn't shrink herself to fit into rooms she's outgrown. She doesn't apologize for her strength, her opinions, or her presence. She's real, raw, and unapologetically herself. And that scares people who are used to women who perform instead of exist. She's done with pretending. Done with playing small to make others feel comfortable. She's not here to blend in. She's here to be seen, and not just for what others want her to be, but for who she actually is. She doesn't mold herself to match expectations. She doesn't adjust her tone, her dreams, or her personality just to fit in. She knows that authenticity will cost her, but she also knows that being fake costs more. She's been there before, wearing masks to keep the peace, smiling when she was hurting, saying yes when everything in her wanted to say no. And now she chooses truth, even when it's messy, even when it's misunderstood, because truth is where her power lives. She's not here to be digestible. She's not watering herself down so others can feel in control. If her presence is too loud for someone, they can step back. She doesn't make herself smaller just so others can feel bigger. That's not confidence. It's survival. And she's no longer in survival mode. She's in ownership mode. She owns her story. She owns her voice. She owns the fire in her gut and the softness in her heart. She doesn't pick one. She honors both. There's a rawness in her that can't be polished away. She speaks when it's uncomfortable. She feels deeply and fiercely. She doesn't sugarcoat truth to be liked. She doesn't pretend to be okay when she's not. And she doesn't hold back when something needs to be said. That's what makes her magnetic. People may not always agree with her, but they remember her, because realness leaves a mark. Realness cuts through the noise, and yes, her honesty will intimidate people. It will rattle those who hide behind performance. But that's not her concern. She's not here to be understood by everyone. She's not here to be liked by everyone. She's here to live in alignment. She's here to walk in purpose. And if that means losing approval, she'll take the loss. Because self-betrayal is too high a price. She refuses to play a character in someone else's story. She's the author of her own. She doesn't seek validation. She seeks connection. Real, deep soul-level connection. And that can only happen when you show up as your whole self. So she does. Flaws and all. Strength and vulnerability. Light and shadow. Because a high-value woman knows that authenticity is not weakness. It's freedom. And once you taste that kind of freedom, you stop begging to be accepted. You stand firm in who you are, and you let the world adjust. She doesn't fear rejection anymore, because she knows rejection is just redirection. If someone can't handle her truth, they were never meant for her journey. And she doesn't carry guilt for that. She lets them go with grace, because her energy is reserved for people who see her, not just tolerate her. She's not building relationships on compromise. She's building them on compatibility. And that only works when you show up real. She's not trying to prove she's enough. She knows she is. She's not waiting for someone to choose her. She already chose herself, and that choice, every single day, is what makes her untouchable. Because when you stop needing the world to approve of you, you start living for something bigger than image. You start living from truth. And that's where a high-value woman lives. Fully, fiercely, and free. A high-value woman doesn't need to announce herself to be felt. She doesn't seek the spotlight. But somehow, the room shifts when she enters it, not because she demands attention, but because she radiates a presence that can't be faked. It's calm, controlled, quiet, but commanding. She doesn't need to prove her strength with noise. Her silence speaks. Her stillness holds power. She knows who she is, and that self-awareness creates a kind of gravitational pull. People notice, not because she's trying, but because she is. She leads with quiet power, and that's what makes her unforgettable. She's not loud because she doesn't have to be. She's earned her confidence, not from being told she's good enough, but from surviving the moments when she wasn't sure she was. She's grown through fire. She's sharpened herself in silence, and now she walks differently, speaks differently. She doesn't rush to fill space with words. She doesn't fight to be heard, because she knows real power doesn't perform. It just exists. There's something magnetic about the way she holds herself, shoulders back, eyes steady, energy contained. She doesn't enter the room to compete. She enters to observe, to listen, to understand. While others are scrambling to be seen, she's reading the room, and by the time she speaks, everyone is listening, because they've already felt her presence long before she said a word. She's emotionally disciplined, not because she suppresses what she feels, but because she refuses to let her emotions control her. She knows when to speak and when to stay silent. She knows when to step forward and when to step back. She doesn't react just to be reactive. She acts with intention. Every move is deliberate. Every word is measured. And that kind of restraint, that kind of composure, it's rare, it's threatening, and it's powerful. She doesn't just move with confidence, she moves with conviction. She's not chasing titles, attention, or approval. She's focused on impact, on legacy, on walking in alignment with her values. She knows what she stands for. She knows what she will and will not allow. And because she's so clear on her boundaries, she doesn't have to keep defending them. People feel them. They're unspoken, but undeniable. This kind of woman doesn't rely on chaos to be remembered. She relies on presence, grace, depth. She carries herself with dignity in a world obsessed with noise. She knows how to lead without controlling, how to influence without forcing, how to be respected without ever having to demand it. Her leadership isn't loud, it's anchored. It comes from integrity, from clarity, from doing the inner work no one sees. And the truth is, quiet power lasts longer. It's not flashy, but it's unshakable. While others burn out trying to be everything to everyone, she stays consistent, grounded, rooted in who she is, and that's why people come to her, not because she's the loudest in the room, but because she's the most centered. Because she sees what others miss, she feels what others hide, and she knows when to speak and when to let silence do the work. Her presence is her power. It's not in how much she says, but in how much she knows. Not in how many people she impresses, but in how many lives she impacts. She's not trying to prove she's powerful, she just is, and that truth, that quiet, steady truth, it stays with you, long after she's gone. So understand this. Being a high-value woman isn't about what you wear, what you post, or what you say to be seen. It's about who you are when no one's watching. It's the quiet choices, the disciplined decisions, the unwavering standards. It's the way you protect your peace, the way you move with purpose, the way you stand firm when everything around you tries to shake you. You don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need to chase to be wanted. You simply need to become so whole, so true, and so certain of your worth that nothing and no one can convince you to settle for less than you were born to carry. Because once you step into that version of yourself, fully, boldly, without apology, you stop surviving and start leading. And from that moment on, you're not just a high-value woman, you're unstoppable.